Gina Mundy. When I asked Gina what motivates her, her answer that she gave me, I've never heard before. I've had the pleasure of doing close to 350 now of these conversations, and she's an incredible person. Her answer to, how do you find success? How do you define success? Is saving babies. Gina is an attorney. I've never heard of this, but a childbirth attorney. She wasn't aware of it either. She went to law school for something else, but came upon this, and she explains how. But when complications happen during childbirth, and the law has to get involved, attorneys have to get involved, she's there. So she's been doing over 20 years. She's seen so many cases. She represents the hospital. She talks about the difference between the cases, and it got to a point where she said, I have to write a book. I have to tell parents what to ask their doctor, what to look for, what happened in these cases went bad. It's an incredible book. She's just a wonderful person, and she's trying to save babies. She talks about doula. She's never had a case. She didn't even know what a doula was until like last year or something, well into her career. She's never had a case where there's a doula. Interesting discussion on that. I don't know if you know the drug Pitocin. She has a lot of opinions on that as well. But just a great conversation with Gina Mundy. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. I'm very excited to talk to you, Gina Mundy. Thank you so much, Mundy, for your time today. So why should expecting mothers have a plan?
Oh, that is absolutely huge. Because listen, childbirth, it's unpredictable. You really
Mm.
you really can't plan for it, which is exactly why you need a plan. Because you need to be able to make good decisions. You need to be able to pivot during childbirth because it is so unpredictable. And with when I also suggest having a plan as an attorney specializing in childbirth cases, my spin's a little bit different. It's the act of preparing the plan. That's
Mm.
why really you do need a plan because you're going to sit in the comfort of your own home. You're going to read books. You're going to listen to great podcasts. You're going to call a friend about all of these different things that may, come up during childbirth that you're sitting again in the comfort of your own home preparing for. Because I can tell you, when you go into labor, you enter a different state of mind. And because of that, if you have to be ready because you have to be able to pivot because really your main goal and focus is to mentally and physically deliver your baby. So if your doctor or your nurse is over here in the corner saying, okay, well, this is going on and what do you want to do? I mean, you kind of have to come out of that for a minute, understand what they're saying and make a good decision. So having a plan is it's crucial. And I can tell you in my childbirth cases, I'm sure you'll do the intro, but I've been a childbirth attorney for 21 years. And really, I only see the bad stuff. unfortunately. So I can tell you having a plan is crucial because the families that are in my cases for the past 21 years have been just one decision or minutes from a healthy baby. So
Mm.
just having that plan, being prepared, I cannot stress enough. That is 100% the key to having a healthy baby.
But, with all I mean, we've been having babies for thousands and thousands of years. With all this technology, with all this equipment, with all this education, there's still problems.
Unfortunately, my first
Yeah.
case was in February 2003. I was hired into a team of over 20 of us, and that's all we did are these baby cases. And today,
Wow.
I still continue to practice, in this field. It's sad. It's sad, and that's why I authored a book because I wanted to get this information out there to families because I can tell you as an attorney specializing in childbirth cases, how I prepare my kids for childbirth, completely
Mm.
different than a traditional family. Hence my book. And I get it, all the technology and whatnot. But, it comes down to different doctors, different practices. Doctors do not agree very often when it comes to childbirth.
Yeah, I've heard you say that doctors give contradictory even during testimony or testimony or when you're speaking to them, like contradictory just opinions and approaches.
It it was one of the most eye-opening things when besides seeing the outcomes of the cases, which is, a healthy baby or something happens to mom. That was the other biggest eye-opening thing. I I was in shock because I would have basically, to give you an example, a case comes in. I have to retain medical experts to look at the case. So medical experts, they deliver babies, they're experts in their field, and I would hire two, sometimes from the same hospital. And what they do is they come in and they review all the records. If there's any testimony, they may review some testimony. And then after they review everything, the care that mom and baby received, they talk to me and they tell me, was this good care or bad care? And I'll talk to one doctor, and one doctor is like, the care in this case was perfect.
Hmm.
The next doctor, everything was done wrong.
Wow.
And then they'll tell me why. And then if they would have done it right, baby would been, born okay. So I started early in my career asking doctors in depositions. I'm like, why do you believe this? And the other doctor believes that. And all they've ever done when I do that is just dismiss the other one as crazy.
Huh. They'll
It,
turn
it,
on each other.
they do. They testify against each other. Oh, that's my life. They just testify. You're wrong. You're right. You're wrong. I mean, and if you don't agree with that particular doctor, you're crazy.
And the hospital itself can't create a policy or an SO, a standard operating procedure for this. It's up to the delivering doctor,
Yeah,
correct?
there's protocols in place. And those are guidelines, but you got to remember every labor is different. Every
Right.
patient's different. There's always different circumstances. So yeah, they can't lay out, they can give you general guidelines to follow. They're not, we call it standard of care.
Mm.
But they're guidelines. But no, I mean, you're the delivery team, the nurses, the residents, the doctors, they're midwives. They're using their experience and their knowledge to, manage a, mom in labor.
And you also make a point, of saying how the nurses are the real kind of heroes and, you know, um, unsung, kind of, they deserve a lot of credit. You've had cases where they're crying, not because they did anything wrong, just because of the empathy and the sympathy of what happened.
Yes, I think labor and delivery nurses are some of my favorite people on earth,
Mm, mm.
especially when you have a good one born to be a labor and delivery nurse. They do, and they show more human emotion than anyone else in the case. They connect with a good one will connect with their patients, and yeah, they're amazing. And let me tell you, during labor, you have a good labor and delivery nurse. You're doing much better because there are some out there that are not great. They typically end up leaving the profession pretty quick. I will
Burned
say
out.
that. But that's the
Mm.
problem. If you get one in that 6 months, year, 5 years, and then they're like, I'm out." That's sometimes where it becomes, a problem.
You also make a point, saying that you never had a case where a doula was involved.
Yes. I love doulas. I'm so sad because I did write the book and I okay, I did not know anything about doulas. I'm a C-section mom. And somebody had approached me and I'm like, Gina, what are you putting in the book about doulas? I'm like, I don't know anything about doulas. And then I published the book and I just start learning all about doulas. And it's like ding, ding, ding. Childbirth attorney knows nothing about doulas. Okay.
Mm,
The one who sees everything go wrong doesn't know anything about doulas. That's because
mm.
doulas are helping to bring babies into this world healthy. Because there's a
Wow.
lot of doulas out there around me and whatnot. So and a lot of people are using doulas. So the fact they're not in my cases is huge. And I can tell you in the last 21 years, if a doula would have talked to a mom during pregnancy, at any point, she would be drug into the case.
Wow.
There's no mention of doulas anywhere.
Wow.
And I was actually on the phone last week with another fellow childbirth attorney, and I said something about a doula. He goes, Gina, what's a doula? I'm like, I know. I don't know anything about doulas
Wow.
either. But when we don't know, and we've been practicing the same amount of time, when we don't know anything about doulas, that's huge.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. So now
And
I'm a huge advocate for doulas. I'm actually I told you in pre-show I'm starting my own podcast.
yeah.
My second guest is a doula
Uh,
because we're gonna get that out there that you find a good doula, it's awesome.
do you know the process of becoming a doula? I know that we didn't use one. The mother of my daughters, what's it like? They don't have to go to medical school, correct? I mean, what's the
Nope.
curriculum like?
No, so technically, if you hire a doula, you're their client because they don't have that medical training to be
Right.
your patient.
Right.
And they just basically understand the labor and delivery process. So a lot of doulas, for instance, they go to certain hospitals. So now they know the delivery teams that are there.
Interesting.
They may, have an idea of who your doctor is, but no, they're not doing any kind of medical advice, anything. They're more of advocates and just making sure everything's going okay. And I can tell you, there's been so many cases where I know if a doula was involved, that it would have been different because one of the biggest things in the cases is a busy labor and delivery unit. So you have a delivery team, they may be a good team, but they're overwhelmed because babies come when babies want to come. So they're overwhelmed. They're running hard. Something happens as and if you're not medically trained or you don't really, you're the new mom or new dad, you're younger, you just may not understand that maybe you got to contact the delivery team. And that's where doula can come in and be
Hmm.
like, hey, delivery team, or hey dad, go get delivery team, or just be there. I mean, even the labor and delivery nurses, if it's a good doula, they want doulas. Doulas make their job easier. They love
Wow.
having doulas.
Ah.
So yeah, doulas are telling you. But yeah, they're more like clients, advocates. They're they do walk a fine line with giving medical advice. And I know a lot of doulas are like, if I'm calm, to the family will be like, if I'm calm, you're calm. If I'm
Mm,
not calm, you're not calm. You
mm,
got to learn how
mm,
to read me. So
mm.
stuff like that.
Your book, which is up on your website, which anybody could download, you actually have a questionnaire that the expecting mothers should be asking their medical professional.
Yes. Yes. Top 20 questions. So
Yeah.
those 20 questions, we ask those questions of doctors, even in childbirth cases, no matter who they are. If they're a fact witness, if they're an expert witness, just to kind of get an idea of, how involved are they with delivering babies and whatnot. But no, there's some definitely important questions, um, you know, that I recommend asking. And again, these are not, as a childbirth attorney, I'm going to recommend different questions than probably a normal, a normal person. But, one big question is, OBGYNs, that's who delivers your baby. OB, obstetrics, GYN, gynecology. So gynecology or women issues, OB obstetrics is your pregnancy. So
Ah.
some doctors, especially as they get older, do more of the GYN, the women's issue. That's like more 9 to 5.
Hmm.
I'm not sure doctors who deliver babies think it through when they're going to, into that profession, but it's demanding. It's hard. Babies come when they want to come. It's not a 9 to 5 job. You're working nights, you're working weekends, depending on what shifts you're picking up. And they're long too. They're 12 hours. So,
Hmm.
you do what I always say, you do want a doctor who is the majority of their practice is obstetrics, where they are delivering babies. They are in the trenches a lot. And, they're going to know the delivery teams. Because here's the deal, doctor's not so the doctor heads the delivery team, but the doctor's not at the hospital.
Right.
The people who are at the hospital, the delivery team, the nurses, the midwives, the residents, I mean, basically, most of the time, those are the people who are scheduled to work that day.
Mm.
So it's an interesting dynamic. So if you have a doctor who mainly practices obstetrics, it's just they're in the trenches. They're talking to these people more. They have better communication and, all around.
You've been doing this for 20 years. How difficult or what were the challenges you found during the pandemic when doing this?
Oh, I mean, everything went Zoom.
Just went Zoom. That's it.
Zoom. Everything is Zoom. I go to court on Zoom most of the time. Meetings. I mean, I did go to the hospital yesterday, but it's just, and you can't. But we're trained too as attorneys who come in and they try cases. You have to like read people. You have to read witnesses. You got to be able to
Mm,
respond.
mm.
It's much harder doing that on Zoom. So like most depositions now are on Zoom, and it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's still continuing to this day because you can
Really?
do it. Can you do it as effectively? Mm, that's a that's a good question.
That's interesting. So why continue to do it now? Just people are too this busy schedules, and I would figure we'd go back to in person, especially for depositions.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Huh.
Everybody's still very. I mean, I'm in Michigan. I don't know if that makes a difference. So, but no, I know. So
Yeah.
there is gradually more stuff I'm doing in person. Gradually, definitely more than the pandemic was 2 years of not seeing humans except on
Mm.
Zoom. So it's gradual, but I don't think we'll ever go back.
Was there an increase in cases during that time?
So
Decrease?
the lag, it's now. So those
Ah.
are just coming in.
Text
So,
years. Interesting.
yeah, that there's because you have something happens, they contact an attorney, they got to get the records, experts, time, So those are the ones. It's interesting, because
Mm.
they are baby cases too. In Michigan, they have until like they're 9. So other states it's like 18. So those tend to, just depending on the law firm. Maybe they're not in most cases, if there's negligence, is 2 years, except when you
Hmm.
deal with a child.
So I mean, it's got to be difficult work because obviously you're just seeing what happens wrong all the time, Gina. So has there been a case where there's actually negligence on the parent? Like they were doing something wrong? I mean, you're always you're in the position of defending the hospital, of course, but I mean the mother has certain obligations as well to be healthy, to be etc. And that must be very trying for you.
Yeah, it can be. Actually, one of those we took a case like that where it was really sad for the baby, but it was not the fault of the doctor. It was a mom who had rolled up to the hospital. And now this is long ago. I don't know if this case would fly these days, but it did 20 years ago or 15, whatever it was. But no, yeah, mom rolls up. She never had a day of prenatal care. She smoked marijuana. There was no amniotic fluid. They started the baby's heart rate, which was, we call it like static, just really blah, because baby had a pre-existing brain injury.
Mm.
And yeah, so no, we took it in front of the jury, and the jury awarded the baby millions. The
The
story's
baby.
literally, yeah, so the doctor was an amazing doctor, and I included that trial, that story in the book, I think chapter 4, How to Pick the Good Doctor, because she was a really good doctor. She was so incredibly distraught over the lawsuit, she actually couldn't drive herself to trial, to court. So she had to have somebody drive her, and then I would drive her home a lot just because I lived by her and whatnot. So I would drive her home after trial because she was, and so then we got hit with the verdict. And it was Christmas, so we called it the Christmas verdict. And walked back to the office, and she's like, "I quit."
Right.
And it was really hard. And we're like, "Please don't do that." Now, years later, that award was overturned, and the family and their attorney did not pursue another trial. So in the end, the doctor was okay, and she still practices today. But yeah, it is. But you're still dealing with a baby with a brain injury. So putting those, it's really hard for juries, I think, to set aside the sympathy. It's very difficult.
So going back to the original plan, Gina. So you have the 20 questions. You have to, obviously pick a great doctor. I mean, all this kind of I, I know when we did it, we were just kind of assigned a doctor. I don't. This is 20 years ago now. So, could you actually say, you know what, you're not qualified enough? Recommend somebody else. Does that happen often?
Oh, I don't know. Good question. It might after reading my book. Um,
Yeah.
but your delivery team is responsible for bringing your baby safely into this world. The doctor heads your delivery team. So having a good one, I cannot emphasize enough how incredibly important that is. So in that chapter, how to pick a good doctor, because I have analyzed OBGYNs now for 21 years. I was
Yeah.
19 years deep when I did the book. But, we have a whole doctor analysis that we do as an attorney. And part of that is asking the questions. But then you have to fall back on some basics, your instinct and intuition, their communication skills.
Mm,
How they communicate to you is likely how they communicate to the delivery team.
mm.
So keep that in mind. But yeah, instincts, intuition. So I'm like, here's my doctor analysis. Now you're going to do a doctor analysis too. And I highly recommend, if you don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling and your spidey senses go up, get a new doctor. Because again, the grand finale is childbirth. And unfortunately, things can go wrong, which unfortunately is what I've seen for, all of these years.
Now, you didn't go to law school to pursue this area of law. It just kind of came upon you.
I love that you know so much about this. Yes, I went really to kind of be an attorney in real estate, business attorney type person. And then I just needed my first job out of law school. Found this one at a big firm where I could have transferred departments. And basically, I got my first case in. I was hired onto this team, and I was like, whoa, having a baby was definitely on my radar. So I wanted to make sure what I was seeing in my cases didn't happen to me. And then
Mm.
I stuck with it all of these years. But I'll tell you, having kids, being pregnant, doing this was not the easiest.
Yeah, because you have 3 kids. I mean, you know, Girl Scout leader, and so all this kind of yeah, like who, the cobbler's sons, cobbler's kids don't have good shoes. So I mean, when you're doing it, you said you had your C-section for each time, and what was your approach? I mean, obviously it's got. Did you use a doula? No, you didn't know what a doula was back then.
Right. Yes. No, again, not in my cases, did not know what a doula was. But yeah, no, most baby lawyers have C-sections. We have a hard time
Really?
relaxing. Hmm. Actually, I
Most
literally put that in the book.
most
'Cause there
baby
was
lawyers have C-sections. That's
baby
interesting
lawyers typically have C-sections.
because you just
So,
can't relax.
no. And so back
Fascinating.
in 2004, when I had my first when I had my first child, um, elective C-sections at 39 weeks, which is the lowest risk to baby. None of us have ever had a case involving, a 39-week elective C-section. But back then, you basically had to tell your doctor you were like you had herpes, because that way you could get your C-section. And my girlfriend, who's a baby lawyer, she's like, Gina, just tell him you have herpes. And I'm like, I'm not putting that on my medical record that I have herpes. And I'm like, I'll just talk to the doctor. We're persuasive people.
Yes.
And
Yes.
whatnot. So funny. So I go to my doctor, and I really liked him. He was a conservative doctor and low risk doctor, which is what I needed. And he's like, Gina, we're just going to try. Why don't we just try? Why don't we see? Gina. And because back then, sorry, I don't think I said, but elective C-sections were looked down upon in 2004. Hence, that's why we all had to have herpes to have one. So anyway, 2004, she goes first. She gets her C-section at 39 weeks because, and she, by the way, she does not have herpes. I
Good.
won't tell my doctor that. So he does not schedule me for a C-section, but I woke up in pretty hardcore labor. Um, and I woke up in hardcore labor, went to the hospital, and yeah, baby's, and that's, baby's heart rate drops a couple times. I'm just like, and he's just like, C-section. I'm like, sure. Thank you. And then the next two were easy. Obviously, those were elective C-sections, because once you have one, again, another reason you don't have to have herpes. You don't have to tell me you have herpes when you don't, to get your elective C-section. Plus, as my kids are pretty spread apart in age, by my second one, having an elective C-section was more acceptable.
So the obvious question I have to ask here. So having herpes, I mean, obviously if the baby exits, it would extract herpes. Is that the, is,
There was a chance that it could make baby very sick.
I see.
So
Okay. So it's an
now
easy way
that's
out.
back then. That's not how it rolls today.
I
But
see.
that's a whole nother conversation. But back in 2004,
Sure.
that was the trick that baby lawyers
Yeah.
use.
It was a herpes time of life. I remember it well.
I know, right? It's
We
a
all
weird
talked
story.
about it, and it never comes up anymore. But do you have cases now where there's C-sections? Do C-sections go wrong?
No, not okay. Here, well, hold on. Let's back up. Most baby cases end in C-section. They start as a vaginal birth,
Right.
and they end in a C-section or operative vaginal delivery, meaning typically vacuum or forceps.
I see.
There's something done at the end where they have to expedite delivery. So that's where the C-section part comes in. But again, elective 39-week C-section. It's lowest risk to baby. Huge abdominal surgery for mom, but yeah. So, but those cases are few and far. It's like if they nick baby on accident, maybe when they're when they're entering the uterus, is probably the only time. But that's, again, it's a nick, not what can happen or what we've seen during labor.
So when these problems happen, and generally speaking, Gina, is it is it lack of skill? Is it lack of talent that they have there? Is the technology? I mean, generally, is it just negligence? What's the cause of these issues?
Chapter 11 of my book. I'm surprised you don't know that by heart now.
Sorry,
Yeah, you know what? I think you
went
probably
through it.
do, and you just ask questions because you know how I'm going to respond. No, I like when people understand the our conversation. So I love this more than you know.
Yes.
Chapter 11 of my book. This is where it really differs from any other book you'll read on childbirth, and but it has the most common facts and issues in a legal baby case. So, number one, most common issue and fact in a legal baby case is the drug Pitocin. Pitocin is the drug that's used to induce mom's labor by making her uterus contract, her body follows along, and baby's supposed to be delivered. But when you have Pitocin, it's just they're very strong contractions. So then mom usually gets an epidural, and it's like this line of intervention, and that's really when mistakes and complications occur. So that's number one. In my chapter 11, I give 10. I did like the top 10. But another one we just talked about was it's a busy labor and delivery unit. You
Mm.
can have a good team, but if you're not prepared or you don't know what to look for, or you don't have, now again, mom, you're focusing on mentally and physically delivering baby. But if you don't have, so let's say you don't have a doula. So in my book, chapter 7, I say baby advocate, husband, grandma, aunt, best friend, whoever, if they have an understanding of what to look for, then they can kind of work with the delivery team or get the delivery team, if there's something that needs to be addressed. So, a big thing sometimes that happens in cases is there may be concerns about the baby. And then the delivery team gets really busy and the baby's heart rate will stop graphing because, um, for whatever reason, baby may be getting into trouble or whatever. Well, the delivery team's running hard. They don't notice baby's heart rate's not graphing. But, if you have an advocate or you have a doula, they're going to know like, okay, we got it. There's been concerns about the baby. The best way we know how baby is doing during labor is their heart rate. We need to get this heart rate back up so we can see how baby's doing. Because I can tell you, I can look at a baby's heart rate and I can tell you, is baby a rock star or is baby struggling? So keeping that, or knowing that, and then getting the delivery team, to restart the baby's heart rate is absolutely, it can be huge, because in cases they come back and they're like, where's the heart rate? All of a sudden they're bringing in an ultrasound machine and there is no heart rate. And there's been cases where, babies passed or baby's heart rate's very low and they got to get baby out and baby's born very sick. So it's stuff like that, because listen, if the delivery team knows baby's in trouble, then they'll beeline for baby. But if they don't know, they don't know. Because if they're helping mom who's stalled out in labor, but her baby's okay, there's another baby that's in trouble, they're going to go to baby in trouble versus mom whose baby's okay. So anyway, but it's understanding that. My book is not, okay, these are the common issues and common facts in a case. It's okay, if this occurs, this is what you have to do. So Pitocin, for instance, I have a chapter on how to have a safe Pitocin induction based upon what I've seen, over the last how many years. Busy delivery unit, this is what you need to make sure you have in place. So if that happens, they can work with your delivery team. Number 3, another really common, this is more of just a common fact in a case, is the water breaking. So once mom's water breaks, the baby can become more vulnerable to, injury. It changes their environment in the uterus. So you have baby, umbilical cord, placenta, all surrounded by fluid. You drain the fluid out. It'll change that environment. So, doctors will often recommend breaking your bag of water. So it's really important. So I go to moms and I'm like, okay, I like water intact for as long as possible, because we know baby's environment is the same. So unless there's a medical reason, you may not want to break your bag of water so fast, because again, that's when baby becomes more vulnerable to injury, because in the cases, again, if there's injury to baby, it's typically after the water breaks. So
Just this morning in the Wall Street Journal, I thought of you. The United States delivering of babies is down the lowest that it's been since the late 70s. Does that surprise you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not good on those trends, because I know like the pandemic hit and then there were a bunch of babies. So now we're 4 years out. And now they're slowing down on the babies. Everybody seems so incredibly busy these days.
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't surprise me. Every time I talk to somebody, it's like, hey, how are you? I'm so busy I can't see straight. So, you know,
They are
that,
busy. Where are we going, Gina? Why is everybody so stressed? Getting back to your list, Pitocin, you talk a lot about that. I remember you saying it's like some doctors say, looking at the case, the previous doctor prescribed way too much. Some say it's not enough. Some say it's perfect. I mean, that it's controversial as far as how much the quantity is of that drug is delivered. Correct?
Oh, you are good. I love this. Yes, that is 100% correct. That's the problem. So, listen, here's the deal. Pitocin, not a fan as a childbirth attorney,
Hmm.
but doctors, every time I say, hey, I don't like Pitocin, everyone always says, Gina, chill out. So, so this is what's the story. You already hit it, but so doctors, nurses across the board, Pitocin can be a safe option during labor. The issue is, like you just said, they all administer it differently. And yes, again, going back to my legal experts, I've had them to look at the case. The first doctor was like, so they looked at the Pitocin management, they looked at the contractions, they looked at everything. And the first doctor is like, oh my goodness, this is way too aggressive. They blew the baby out of the uterus with Pitocin. And I'm like, ooh, all right. So
Wow.
next doctor, I'm like, doctor's like, Pitocin management is absolutely perfect.
Hmm.
Nature happens, Gina. And I'm like, Really? I go, because I just talked to a doctor who said they blew the baby out of the uterus with the Pitocin. And that second doctor goes, I am offended by that statement. And I'm like, I didn't mean to offend you. I was just letting you know what the doctor before said. Again, going back, different doctors, different management styles. I'll tell you, the first doctor, that's probably who I'd want, the one that was more critical. Yeah, that's the one who would be delivering my grandkids.
Mm,
So I'm like,
that's a good point.
so, it's that's the thing. And another thing that I've learned since I published my book by going on podcasts is that a lot of moms have have a Pitocin induction. It's the worst experience, but for some reason they have to have another Pitocin induction. I had a mom, her husband's military, he was being deployed. He wanted to be around for the birth of the baby. She agreed to a second Pitocin induction reluctantly because the first one was such a disaster. And the way she did it was literally exactly how I outlined it in my book. So she went through it, awful. So then she basically ran the next Pitocin induction, and it was perfect. And she, we had the best podcast because basically it was like she had not read my chapter, but it was I recommend exactly what she did. And so, it's it was very interesting.
And there's, I think the mother of my daughters at one point actually had a spine. Where they numb the spine for the pain. What am I trying
Yeah.
to say? Oh, what's that
Epidural.
called? Epidural. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess that is common. Now, when you hear people delivering on no drugs at all, and almost, are proud of that. Your feelings on that?
Oh yeah, all day long. Skip the drugs. Skip Pitocin. We call it Pit. Skip Pitocin. Skip the epidural. So what I do not see in my cases is spontaneous vaginal birth, meaning
Mm,
no drugs. You didn't get anything for the pain. You didn't get anything to induce your contractions. There have been a few of those cases, very few and far between. Your complications and your mistakes, they go hand in hand with the labors that involve, the drugs, the
wow.
interventions. So,
Because it does its job in numbing, so you can't feel the birth. But then again, you can't control certain things.
mhm.
Oh my goodness,
Epidural, yeah, can delay your labor.
and delay it as well.
So when you have Pitocin, Pitocin causes contractions. Contractions suck. Have you heard that? Have you heard me say that part yet? Contractions suck, right? So they suck for mom. So mom's lucky, mom gets an epidural, but contractions suck for baby because when a contraction occurs, that's the uterus contracting down on baby, also contracting down on baby's lifeline, the umbilical cord,
Ooh,
and squeezing down on placenta. So that
ooh,
decreases the blood flow and oxygenation to the baby. So, listen, no one freak out. I got to always go with this. Babies are literally made to handle contractions.
right.
But when you have Pitocin and they're causing too many contractions and mom's numb because mom can't handle it, well, listen, your baby can't either sometimes. And that's why a lot of Pitocin inductions, they do end up with your vaginal operative delivery or your C-section because in the end, baby can't handle it and they need to expedite delivery. And those are your close calls. And there's so many moms who do end up on I call it the right side of a close call. Like in the end, baby's okay, they're okay. But it's my cases are that scenario, and again, they end up on the wrong side of the close call. And then again, it's minutes. It's a decision from a healthy baby. It's heartbreaking.
So you decide to write, Parents Guide to a Safer Childbirth in the hopes that, you know, it'll help, less problems in birth, help mothers, help children. It's noble and it's wonderful. But did you get sanctioned by the hospital? Were there any like legalities that you had to go through to release something like this?
Nope. I didn't nope. Nothing. Could I have? Maybe. But
Hmm.
I mean, here's the deal. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this because I don't a lot. So if you did listen to the right podcast, you would have heard me say, I basically, so we had a near tragic family event. Boom. I'm like, okay, I got to write what I know I have to write down, at least for my kids and my family, but then realized everybody needed to know about this. So I make the decision to write a book. I start writing. So I'm 19 years deep into my profession. In the first 3 months, I basically just cried
Mm.
because going back, so clearly I had suppressed everything that I had felt as a human, as a mom
Wow.
for 19 years. So it was very therapeutic actually to write the book, to get it out. But that also required me to go back and like each family, like remember them, remember their story. What can we learn from it? It was really difficult. But in the end, after 3 months, I finally stopped crying. It was actually concerning because I could you imagine waking up for 3 months straight and crying? It was really, and then you have to go on with your day. So, I wrote the book. I don't know if you know, at 3 in the morning. I to this day I still get up at 3 in the morning, but I wrote the book in the middle of the night, and so it was easier for me to cry because everybody was sleeping, the whole world. So, but I had this clarity at the end, and um, I just knew that I had the information that could help, spare other families what I've watched over the years and watched these other families endure. Because when you lose a baby or a mom to a preventable mistake, I don't to this day understand how they go on. It's awful.
Mm.
So at that point, I'm on a mission, and that's it, and I don't give I shouldn't say that. I gotta be careful,
I
but
understand.
you know how I feel, obviously.
Yes.
I'm on a mission because I do know that my book will help save babies, and, I had said in pre-show I'm starting a podcast, and I am like, "Okay, what's my first episode gonna be?" And this mom, it was the weirdest thing how we got connected, but we did. Her baby was born 4 months ago, and she walked in with a healthy baby, and she should have left with a healthy baby, and she didn't.
Mm.
And she had listened to me on podcast, and what I have talked about podcast happened to her. And so she's my first episode. But it's about how to have a safe childbirth. But it was like she I needed that story. I needed her to be my first guest. So people understand like this is happening. The baby, I just did this podcast. It's for her the poor baby's 4 months, and their life is forever changed. So, this is again fueling me in a way that I can't tell you, because every episode after that, it's going to be okay. This is what you're going to do if you're expecting, or if you're a grandma, or if you're a husband, or if you're a friend of a friend who's pregnant and you want to make sure that baby's healthy, and let mom focus on, um, mentally, physically delivering baby, give them resources, because again, until my book was published, there's nothing out there like this. But I
Wow.
know if this information gets out there, it's going to help families. And in that podcast, it was so hard. I haven't talked about this yet. I asked the mom, I said, if you have any advice for parents, to help them prevent this from happening to them in the future, like what would you say? And she's like, I tell them to read your book.
Mm.
And because she knew enough about it. And it was like, okay, read. So yeah, when you're like, hey, has anybody approved you? I approved me. And in the end, it's the right decision. If that makes any sense.
It
Like I
makes
approve
perfect
me.
sense. It's
Yeah.
wonderful, Gina. Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And thank you for doing it. It must be really rewarding. I wonder, do you get the opportunity to talk to this one mom, but hopefully there's more that can prevent these kinds of things from happening by gaining great insight from your book.
I hope so.
That's the goal.
That's I know it's gonna help families, because if there's just so many, again, I just keep going back. Like families are minutes, a decision away from a healthy baby. They're just so close. Even the mom that's gonna be, the first episode of my podcast. She has to be a little bit, we kept it a little bit vague, but you could, I know more during pre-show and stuff, but she says it. I mean,
Wow.
she was minutes from a healthy baby, and it's just like, just it's just so life changing. She's a nurse.
Mm,
She's a nurse. She's in the medical field.
mm.
She's not a labor and delivery nurse, but she walked in and she trusted her team.
Right.
And the guilt and the anger and it's heartbreaking.
Certainly is. So I started my business in the 90s and I was working way too hard and I was working early in the morning, like you said, waking up at 3, and I wasn't paying attention to myself at all, and before eating poorly and pizza and soda. Before you know it, I found myself at 340 pounds. And the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. My oldest was just
Oh,
born. Yeah. So, um, you know, I got pissed at myself. And so for the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds. I kept it off. People always ask me how, like there's some quick answer. And I always say discipline. That's how I kept it off. That's how I got rid of it. And that's how I keep it off. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Gina Mundy.
yeah. I knew you were going to ask that. See, because I did my research too. Um, yeah, discipline. So I might have too much.
Hmm. Is there such thing? Interesting.
Yeah, no. I I'm so dedicated. So my book took 14 months to write. I published it June 2023. And yeah, it's like my life is so different for the last 2 years. But you're gonna make me cry on this episode. But basically, my sister came over yesterday for almost like an intervention. She's like, "Gina, you have to stop going to bed at 7 PM. Like, your family needs you. You have to stay up later. You have to stop this." And she's like, and I've had a couple other people step in and they're like, "You gotta slow down." And I'm like, I just got to get, everything out. And I remember over the fall, they're like, please, can you please be normal? And I'm like, just give me till Christmas. Just give me till Christmas. So it's now Christmas has passed. Again, I just go, go, go. And I'm like, just give me till June. Just give me till June. I promise I'll stop going to bed at 7. But it's light out. People are here. And I'm like, good night. And I love it, and I love waking up at 3 and whatever, and just getting right into it, and, but yeah, so when because I knew it's like your discipline is too much, too little,
Mm,
or whatever, and I'm like, "Well, considering I had an intervention last night, this is how I'll answer that question when he asks me."
mm.
So they're intervening saying, "Please, just can you relax, and you gotta be a mom," and I do. I mean, my little man's 9, my daughter's 15, and my other daughter's 20. I mean, they need me, and yeah, and because I'm still a partner in my law firm, and I'm doing all this. Now I started a podcast. My social life's out, so actually, I agreed to go to a party on Saturday.
Good for you.
Yes, I know. And my friends are so excited. They haven't seen me in so long. So, yeah.
A-
So
And,
I'm trying to go back to normal.
mm, I wish you luck. So you get up at 3 because everything is quiet and you can just get work done.
Yep. So basically, so you make the decision to write a book, which I think you might be writing a book.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you make a decision to write a book. So for me, it was like, okay, great. When am I going to do that? And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to adjust some things. So I was just supposed to do it for a little bit where I get up at 3. And sometimes I was so excited to write, I'd get up at 2:30 and just, but it was quiet, emails quiet, phones quiet. And then, but basically, I made that social life out. I'm like, okay, just focus on family, which I'm clearly not doing a good job of. But it's basically by 4, 5, try to get dinner, feed everybody. Hi, how's everyone's day? Oh, you're good. You're alive. You're good. To bed. So that's pretty much how the last 2 years of my life.
Hmm.
It's real. I know. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
back to normal. I'm telling you by June. June.
It's
Give me
right
till
around the
June. That's what I
corner.
keep saying.
It's right around the corner.
If
Yeah. So it's fascinating to me, given your level of discipline and your background and your dedication, Gina. What motivates you?
saving babies.
Yeah.
That's it. I just feel like, I never understood why I stayed in this profession because it is a hard profession.
Yeah.
But just the way it's all played out. I was on a podcast called, Your Biggest Mistake, and I tried to quit when my son was born, and because I was just too overwhelmed, um, and they were like, please, don't quit. And they're like, you can work at home, you can, they accommodated me. I stayed in it, and I'm like, thank goodness I stayed in it, because if I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now. But unfortunately, I think the family life, that's the mistake part, is I think the family life suffered a little bit.
Mm,
But no, I just, especially, you're going to have to listen to episode 1, and you'll
can't wait.
understand why I do what I do. It's it's very powerful story. It's unbelievable.
So then how do you measure success
I can't.
at all?
Somebody, people ask me, how many babies have you saved? I'm like, well,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. But you can't measure that. But I do. I'm like, well, I had 6 pregnant beta readers. So before my book was published, I found there's 6 pregnant beta readers, all different ages. And, I have to ask them, hey, is my book scary? Does it need anything else? Blah, blah. They're like, no, Gina, your book's great. Um, we really appreciate having this knowledge before birth. So I'm always like, okay, well, and then finally the last baby was born not too long ago, this fall. So I'm like, okay, well, my 6 pregnant beta readers all had healthy babies.
Wow.
That's my, if you want to measure, that's it. That's all I got. But I know, Amazon, believe it or not, I have almost 500 reviews.
Wow.
I know, it's creeping. It's like 480. I checked this morning, 480 something. And there's a lot of people just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I get emails. So people do thank me, um, and stuff. But, whether really, I don't know. There's no way. But I know in my heart. And I think that's the most important thing.
You're an inspiration, Gina. You're working at it, and I admire you. When we set this up, I was very excited to talk to you, and um, you're doing something that's incredible and noteworthy and thankful. And I've done just a few of these conversations, and I've never had anybody who said, "What's your motivation saving babies?" before. It's wonderful. It's remarkable. Thank you so very much. Anybody who's listening, how can we get in touch with you?
Thank you, Joe, for the kind words. I really appreciate it. So always the best way is going to just be my website, ginamundy.com. GINAMUNDY.com. And that always has, I have a blog for parents or parent resources, and then there's a link basically to my book. But if you just go on Amazon and just type in Gina Mundy, book comes right up. And then the biggest thing is the launching of the podcast. So please wish me luck. The podcast is The Childbirth Attorney with Gina Mundy. So it'll be on all the platforms. Like we talked about in pre-show, 2 days ago, I made my YouTube channel. So, well, I didn't make it. The producer made it. But he, whatever but they, yeah. So it's all starting from scratch on the YouTube channel. So that'll be interesting. Or Instagram. That I've become a fan of Instagram. I can tell you, before I published my book, I was not. If you Google Gina Mundy, my law firm website would pop up. But now,
Mm.
they're like, Gina, you have to be on social media, because that's how people can find out about what you're doing. So my favorite has been Instagram. So at Gina Mundy.
Got a lot of great posts on Instagram too. I'm surprised. Well, you said you didn't like it, you do now, but yeah, it does a great job of giving snippets away. Gina, thank you so much for your time today. If I'm ever in the greater Detroit area and you are coming out a little bit more, perhaps your husband and I we can all get a cup of tea together or something.
I love that show. That would be amazing. And thank you so much for having me on as a guest. And you're such a great host. You know so much. You're awesome. So thank you.
Thank you so much. You be well, Gina.
You too.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations.